So I had to watch a documentary film for class called Wrestling with the Angels, an exploration of Caribbeanness, right? And basically what this documentary was exploring was the use of music and music videos as a way of creating a Caribbean identity, not just for the region, but to the entire world. And one of the things that stood out to me was the question, what is the Caribbean identity and what does it entail? Now, that question has been popping up all the time in my courses that I study, because I also do theatre as well as geography. And I found it interesting because when you think of the Caribbean identity, it's a mixture of multiple identities all over the world that form this one metropolitan identity, basically. The Caribbean story, to me, the origin story, is one that's colorful, because we have a mixture of different races coming together, different cultures coming together. When people think of the Caribbean from an outside perspective, meaning like the wider world, they usually think of Jamaica or reggae instantly. They hardly ever think of soca or calypso. Like in any culture, music, art, any sort of art form should always reflect what that culture is all about. And within the Caribbean, well, mostly for Jamaica and Trinidad, we have our own style of music that was originated in both those islands. So our music videos should also reflect a visual image, basically, of what our culture represents. And there's always a conflict in terms of if we should dilute our images, that cultural image, to suit one that's of an international standard. One of the directors is talking about it being so hard having to dilute the music or having to change it in a way, the music video, sorry, to show or to appeal to an international market. Because the Jamaican culture and dancehall culture, it may be considered a little bit lewd, a little bit crass, a little bit too raunchy to be shown on international television. And another one of the directors was saying no, he totally disagrees with having to dilute what their culture represents just to suit an international standard. Because if you change your own culture, who are you really being? I completely agree with the second director, stating that we shouldn't have to dilute our culture to suit international standards. The thing is, if we allow people to, outside influences, to change who we are we really being? We're not being ourselves. We are a young culture, we are a young region, we're just beginning to grow as a region, we're just beginning to find ourselves in this world. And there are other cultures, European cultures, that's been around for centuries, and they have established their culture in this world. And it's time for us to also establish our culture and our position in this world. Lots of producers, international producers, always ask for that Caribbean look in their videos. And you have to ask yourself, what is the Caribbean look? Is there something such as the Caribbean look? And it's a bit of a yes and no answer. Because once you identify something that is Caribbean, you know, hey, that person is from the Caribbean, the way they move, the way they talk. But is there something that statement, the Caribbean? I say no. Because the Caribbean is made up of a lot of different things. People usually associate the Caribbean with Jamaican type culture, which is the reggae music, the colors of their flag, everything like that. But people are yet to understand and recognize the other cultures found within the Caribbean that the other Caribbean islands can offer. And I think that's a result of not being able to push our culture out there more. If it is that we did more of that, then the Caribbean, the idea of Caribbeanness to the international world would be more recognized and more known. One thing in particular I didn't too like about the video was the fact that they didn't really explore what the basis of Caribbean identity is and how that's found in music. They basically explored few identities found within the Caribbean. They didn't really sum up as to what the Caribbean identity represents. Right? There were lots of, I would say, Jamaican and Trinidadian biases, mostly Jamaican, because I guess too that will have to come with the fact that Jamaica has a longer set of documentation when it comes to their musical culture and everything like that, and that's no exception. I completely agree with the reason why they would choose to do that. But I think that they should have done a little bit more research into the other islands and what they brought out as a part of their culture and what did they bring to the term Caribbean identity, in a sense. The question arises, what would people take away from a video like that? What would be both a foreigner and a native? what would be their response to something like that? And honestly, there are a lot of people that live within the region that haven't accepted what the Caribbean identity really and truly is, because we're so accustomed to being exposed to a foreign standard when it comes to music and music videos and images. Music videos are basically a way of physicalizing our music in a sense. So that image that we're accustomed seeing, that perfect image that's moral in a sense, that's what they accept as okay. And it's been infiltrated into our culture. We accept certain things that are foreign, and when it comes to seeing our own stuff on the screen, it is shocking to us. It's like, no, why is it our culture? Why is our culture so different in a sense? Why is it so lewd? Why it's so crass? But we have to come to accept that that is our culture. And if you find a way of, I want to say change, but to modify it or to perfect it in a way that we could put it out there. If you come to accept our culture, then it will be much easier to take it and then to share with the rest of the world. For example, Machel Montano is one of my favorite artists, and he's done a lot of stuff that's both, I would say, an international standard. Like his music videos had nothing that resembles our culture. For example, Happiest Man Alive. And then he did a video recently called for his song Party Done, and I found that video to be so interesting and so beautiful in a way, because it expressed and it portrayed every single thing that our culture is in a sense. The way that music video portrayed our society, some people found it kind of disappointing. They were like, why would you showcase something like that to the world? Trinidad is not like that. And I found it funny because Trinidad is exactly like that. People live in a bubble within our own society, and they refuse to accept our culture. And that video portrayed certain parts of our culture that is true. And it's the same thing that the Jamaican director was saying in the video that we watched. One of the things that stood out to me in the video was the way women were seen, women were portrayed in the making of these videos. For Jamaican artists, you know, the females would be the dancers in the video. And in any social setting, you could see where some women would think that is not appropriate, because women were actually objectified in a sense in the video. But for those that are actually involved in it, it's a way to express yourself. It's an art form in a sense. It's kind of freeing, you know. And I think it all deals with where you see yourself in society and where you see yourself when it comes to culture. How much you're attached to this process or not. It's people from the ghetto, in terms, that support the local music more than anything else. In Jamaica, it's the ghetto girls that support the dancehall. They're the ones that created the dances that go with these music. Those are the ones that made it popular in a sense. So they're the ones that should be receiving some sort of recognition. This is the culture. It's natural. That's a natural thing to do. And it's the same thing with Machel's video. I found it just works. It works because that's our culture. The Caribbean identity is something that's always evolving, because we haven't reached a place where we can say, yes, this is Caribbean, this is the Caribbean, this is what we represent. I think it's a process, an ongoing process. Our music has always been evolving, whether or not we see it that way, because yes, there's a lot of external influences that come into our music. Like for example, there are lots of soca that's fused with EDM and all that kind of stuff. And I find it very interesting, because at the end of the day, we take something that isn't our own and is our own and make it even better, make a grand product out of it. Because when you come to think of it, nothing is truly our own. The Caribbean is a place where a lot of different cultures fuse together. It's a melting pot of cultures. So you have the African influences, you have the European influences, the East Indian influences, and all that just fused together to create something that's so grand, so special. So I think that because of that little aspect of our culture, it would always continue to grow, because we always take external things and make it our own and produce something that is considered Caribbean, and that is considered Caribbean identity.